Good day, everyone. For this afternoon, I am going to report the protocols to assess impact during environmental impact assessment in relation to our subject course MEP 204 or Environmental Impact Assessment. First things first, let us discuss the introduction related to the protocols during impact assessment for the EIA. So, protocols are standardized and official procedures. Environmental Impact Assessment or EIA protocols aim to assist participants in different stages of the EIA process. Then EIA protocols help assess activities or developments to prevent, minimize, and repair any environmental damages they may cause and while assuming the costs that these effects may imply. And last, the protocols that set standards in terms of high quality methods and their implementation that EIA developers or environmental service providers can or must use to complete the EIA. So there are 6 stages of the EIA process, but I will not go through with the definition of this, or I will not elaborate each type of stage because it will be reported by our colleague in the topic or the steps of EIA. So by the way, these stages are as follows. First, screening, which is deciding if an EIA is required. Second is scoping, deciding what needs to be covered in the assessment and reported in the EIA report. And third, preparing the EIA report. Fourth, making an application and consultation. Fifth, decision making. And last is the post-decision. The protocols to assess impact during environmental impact assessment both have advantage and disadvantage. So let us discuss first the advantage of the protocols during EIA assessment. So one main advantage of using protocols in the EIA process is that they provide a useful guidance for EIA developers, environmental service providers on how the different parts of the EIA need to be implemented, such as how to assess impacts of the development on water quality and quantity. Since we are talking here the environment, so water quality and quantity is one of the main topic that should be considered during the EIA process. And of course, endangered species and biodiversity in general, and how to conduct social impact assessments. The protocols make it easier for any agency evaluating the EIA to assess the quality of the EIA developers' methodologies. So it is been slated in the presentation that the protocols used in the EIA process is a great tool or a powerful tool that some of the developers and service providers may apply in order to have a clear and comprehensive assessment, especially in respect to environmental position or related to environment or all the things that are related to environment. On the other side, the disadvantage of protocols during impact assessment of the EIA is that one potential disadvantage of setting protocols is that environmental service providers might not challenge themselves to advance the methodologies and they will use the protocols as the minimum required. Yes, it is true because once there are protocols that have been set by a particular area or a particular jurisdiction, so the activity or actions made by those environmental service providers are limited or they are bounded by these rules, procedures, and protocols. Just like the COVID-19 protocols that for example, the movement of the people are limited because there are specific protocols that hinder the specific kind of activity or program. Then, another limitation is that it is very challenging to design protocols to cover diverse activities that may be included in different developments, as well as cover various possible ecosystems and social groups in one country or region. Since the protocols to assess impact during environmental impact assessment contributed a disadvantage to the part of the environmental service providers and environmental planners. So, in order to address this limitation, countries often have large number of protocols for diverse sectors, activities, different components of the environment, and types of social groups. Yes, it is very true because each country have a variety of protocols that they should apply on those specific or particular sector or activities and components of the environment or social groups in order not to um, provide discomfort in the part of the population or in the part of the people. But the main purpose of setting protocols is that the social welfare or the social well-being of those particular sector is highly considered. So this then leads to a substantial effort to develop and test many different protocols before their wider use. Then, for example, here in our country, the Philippines, we have this specific protocol, for example, in the zoning requirement. So it is innate and it is common that the zoning protocols here in our country has been widely used and established for years, and it has also been applied or it has been adopted by all the cities, municipalities, and local government units in all parts of the country. So for the zoning protocols, so we are obliged not to erect or not to build our specific structure or building in those restricted zones. For example, there are zones for particular residential houses or for particular commercial buildings, and there are also zones that should be followed for industrial or for construction industry zone. So these protocols help the city or the management to have a comprehensive um, zoning planning in that particular area of concern. So the next point in this report is that we're going to discuss the guiding principles of the EIA procedure. So these guiding principles are largely based on those identified by the International Study of the Effectiveness of Environmental Assessment, launched by the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency and the International Association of Impact Assessment, their Sadler 1996. So these guiding principles are applicable not only to implement an EIA procedure in aquaculture but to all types of other development. When applying or referring to them, it is important to consider the principles as a single package, recognizing their varying interrelationships. By keeping the following principles in mind, rather than focusing narrowly on specific procedures, the application of existing EIAs will be more flexible and cost effective. Those principles should also form a sound basis for the development of new or modified procedures applicable to particular sectors or development contexts. So, this particular phrase um, is from Hambry or et al. In 1999. Still in the guiding principles of the EIA procedure or protocol, so let us discuss one by one the principles, the procedures, or the protocols in order to have a comprehensive impact assessment. So first, the adaptability. So the EIA should be adjusted to realities, issues, and circumstances of the development proposals under review. So it is very important that the environmental impact assessment should be flexible in all issues and realities that happen in that particular area or jurisdiction. Then, the EIA procedure or protocol should be accountability or must have an accountability. So decision makers are responsible to all parties for their actions and decisions under the assessment procedure. So each decision makers should be accountable or responsible for all their parties that are involved during the EIA process or procedure. Then certainty. So the procedure and timing of an assessment should be agreed in advance and followed by all participants. Then the next principle is that credibility. So assessment is undertaken with professionalism, fairness, impartiality, and objectivity. So it is important that the EIA should be credible enough in order not to draw problems related or issues and concerns um, related to the procedure. Then efficiency and cost effectiveness. So the assessment procedure and its outcomes should ensure environmental protection at the least cost to the proponent. So it is also very important that while the procedure or the assessment is ongoing, um, the environmental concern or environmental aspect should be considered or should be protected. Then flexibility. The assessment procedure should be able to adapt to deal efficiently with any proposal and decision making situation. So the procedure or the assessment should be flexible enough in order um, in order or in to enable to adapt to deal efficient or to deal efficiently with any proposal and decision making situation. Then the next principle is practicality. So the information and outputs provided by the assessment procedure should lead to the identification of the measures for impact mitigation that are practical and can be implemented by the developer. So it should be practical, or it should be or the assessment or the procedure should be applied in the real situation or in the real scenario of that particular area of concern. Then transparency. All assessment stages should be clear, easily understood, and open procedures and decisions, and the basis for them should be open and accessible. So all informations and all the data gathered during the assessment or the procedure of the EIA should be open and transparent to everyone. Then the next principle is the participation. So the EIA should provide appropriate and timely access to the procedure and opportunities to inform and involve all interested parties. So it is very important that both parties or all stakeholders involved in the procedure and assessment of EIA should be involved or should be given with respective designation or respective obligations and roles in the process. The next point of this report is the uses of guidelines, procedures, or protocols. So the first use is that the aim of the guidelines is to provide some practical advice and help on the AIA procedure for all stakeholders involved in the design and development of aquaculture facilities or even environmental development. So the guidelines, procedures, and protocols greatly help the stakeholders of the particular AIA procedure or assessment in order for them to have a guiding principles, because these guidelines, procedures, and protocols will be their basis in crafting or creating their assessment in relation to environmental impact. Then the next use of those guidelines is that they are designed for use by all stakeholders in the AIA procedure regardless of holding any specific designation. That is to say, the general public are included, but they are designed in particular for state agencies and AIA practitioners and consultants. So those guidelines, procedures, and protocols are fixed, or meaning to say, those environmental planners and environmental service providers are obliged to follow and, of course, to implement those aforementioned guidelines, protocols, and procedures. Then the third one is that they may also be of use to educators and academics and to students undergoing EIA training. So the guidelines, procedures, and protocols are relevant because these guidelines are cannot be or may not only be used by those environmental service providers, but of course to those educators and academic personnel, and of course to students who undergo EIA training respectively. Now let us discuss the role of EIA protocols to address specific challenges and opportunities. So the primary challenges facing the EIA licensing process include the capacity of both technicians and environmental service providers to provide and evaluate the EIAs, poor quality of studies, and third, length of time necessary to review and approve the EIAs and grant the environmental license. Then, often one of the most limiting factors in the EIA licensing process is the amount of time necessary to review and verify the information in an EIA report. While part of this time is used through bureaucratic processes, times are often significantly lengthier when EIA reports do not meet the minimum standards set by government to ensure quality reporting. Here, EIA protocols can help in outlining the required minimum standards to be followed during EIA preparation and that government agencies can use to assess the quality of the EIA report. Then for the opportunities to improve the EIA process lie within three key areas. First is the strong administration, second is the legal congruency, and third is the environmental compatibility. So in the area of administration, there are several avenues that can help to improve the licensing system, some of which are already being taken in Honduras, for example. So these include implementing an effective online licensing system, developing capacity for technicians and evaluators, streamlining environmental laws for transparency and clarity, and setting criteria and standards for EIA studies. Thank you so much guys for listening and for giving your little time watching my vlog report in relation to our subject course MEP 204 or Environmental Impact Assessment. And as a friendly note, let's not forget to follow different protocols, norms, and procedures set by our local authorities and of course our local agencies, because this is for our own comfort, this is for our own safety, and this is for our own welfare. So these protocols will become our guiding principles and basis, especially in our daily activities and roles in our homes, in our local communities, and of course in our different workstations. Once again, thank you so much guys. Enjoy the rest of the day and please keep safe always. God bless us all. Thank you.